I never thought my life would turn into a story you'd only see in movies. My wife, my partner of 16 years, cheated on me. And not just with some stranger. She betrayed me with my closest friend, the man I built my business with. His name was Jake. We'd started from nothing together, turning long nights and sweat into a company we were proud of. And while I was busting my back keeping the business alive, he was sneaking behind my back with my wife, Sarah. When I finally discovered the truth, she didn't even bother to deny it. She looked me in the eye and told me she never truly loved me, that she only married me because of our daughter. Then she left, without hesitation. Months later, after Jake dumped her and life came crashing down on her, Sarah showed up at my door, crying, begging, like nothing had happened. And that's where this story begins. For 19 years, Sarah was the center of my world. 16 of those years, we were husband and wife, building what I thought was a solid life together. We met young, two broke kids in college who thought love could conquer anything. We laughed through our first apartment with no furniture, just a mattress on the floor. I still remember her smile when we signed the papers for our first house, the way she held my hand during Emily's birth. Those were moments that felt unshakable, carved in stone. From the outside, we looked like the perfect suburban family. Steady jobs, a teenage daughter, a small business starting to grow. Friends would tell us how lucky we were, and I believed it. I believed in her. But while I was dreaming of the next 20 years together, Sarah was hiding a truth that would burn it all to the ground. If there was one thing that kept me grounded through everything, it was Emily, my daughter, 14 years old, but wise beyond her age. She wasn't just my child, she was my anchor. Every morning I'd hear her feet rushing down the stairs, backpack half-zipped, hair in a messy ponytail, and somehow that chaos felt like peace. When I came home late from work, exhausted and covered in dust, she'd always ask, "Did you eat, Dad?" Not many teenagers think of that. She was thoughtful, sharp, and with her, I felt like I was doing something right. To me, Emily wasn't just family. She was my reason, my purpose. I wanted to build a future where she never had to struggle the way I did, and I thought Sarah wanted the same. But soon, Emily would become the witness to everything Sarah tried to destroy, and she would end up being stronger than either of us imagined. Jake wasn't just a business partner. Back then, he was my brother in everything but blood. We met working long shifts at a construction firm, sweating under the Texas sun, both of us dreaming of something bigger. One night over cheap beer, we promised ourselves, one day we'd stop breaking our backs for someone else and build something of our own. So we quit. No investors, no backup plan, just grit, tools we could barely afford, and a beat-up pickup truck. We hustled every small job we could get, repairing fences, remodeling kitchens, patching roofs after storms. There were nights we worked until sunrise, laughing through exhaustion, telling each other this would all pay off. And it did. Slowly, the jobs got bigger, the money steadier. We registered our own company, signed contracts with real clients. For the first time in my life, I felt like we were winning. But little did I know, the man I trusted most was already stealing more than business from me. Those years felt golden. The business was finally stable, our home felt alive, and for the first time I believed I had built the life I once only dreamed of. Saturdays meant grilling in the backyard, Emily running through the sprinklers while Sarah set the table with that easy smile of hers. Sundays, we'd sit in church, hand in hand, looking like the picture of a family who had it all. Emily's laughter filled every corner of that house. Jake would drop by often, sharing beers with me on the porch while Sarah brought us snacks, and I'd think to myself, this is it. This is the American dream. But dreams can be dangerous. They blind you to the shadows moving just out of sight. While I was busy working late nights to keep everything together, a secret was already tearing it apart. And soon, the life I thought was unshakable would collapse overnight. It all started with a sound I'd heard 1,000 times before, Sarah's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. It was late, she was in the shower, and normally I wouldn't even think twice. But that night, something in me said to look. I wish I hadn't. The screen lit up with a message, and before I knew it, I was scrolling through a conversation that shattered everything. Words no husband should ever see. Jake's name right there, paired with sentences dripping in intimacy and promises. Photos. Plans they'd made behind my back. My stomach dropped. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This had been going on for years. The man I trusted with my business, and the woman I trusted with my life, both lying in the same breath. I stood there frozen, phone in my hand, my world splitting in two, and all I could think was, how long has this been going on? That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Sarah came downstairs in her robe, toweling her hair, and I was just sitting there at the kitchen table, her phone in front of me. My hands were clenched so tight my knuckles were white. When she saw the phone, she froze. No words, no excuses, just silence. I asked her straight, "How long?" My voice cracked, but she knew what I meant. Her eyes flickered, then she sighed, almost relieved. 3 years, she said flatly. With Jake. No tears, no apology, just truth dropped on the table like it was nothing. My chest burned. I told her we could fix this, begged her not to walk away. I must have looked pathetic, holding on to scraps of a marriage that was already dead, but Sarah only shook her head. "I'm done hiding. I never loved you the way you loved me." And in that moment, I realized my life as I knew it was over. I sat there staring at her, waiting for something, remorse, regret, even just anger. But Sarah's face was stone. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and said words I'll never forget. "The only reason I married you was because I got pregnant with Emily. I didn't want to raise her alone, so I settled. I tried to love you for 16 years, but it never worked." Her voice was flat, almost bored, like she was reading a grocery list. Every syllable cut deeper. She wasn't just admitting the affair, she was erasing our entire history. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to shake her and make her feel the devastation she'd just unleashed. But all I could do was sit there, numb, while she talked about Jake as if he was her true love, and I was just a mistake she had tolerated. That night, Sarah didn't just end a marriage, she buried it. Her words hit harder than any punch I've ever taken. "I never loved you." 16 years, erased in 4 syllables. My mind replayed every moment, our wedding vows, late-night talks, the first time she held Emily in her arms. Were they all lies? Just an act she put on because she felt trapped? I sat there with my mouth dry, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. I asked her why she stayed so long if she felt nothing. She shrugged. "Because it was easy. Because you provided. Because I didn't want to be alone." There was no hesitation, no shame, just brutal honesty wrapped in cruelty. And still, part of me begged. I told her we could try counseling, that we could fight for what we had. But she just laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut deeper than her words. That's when I realized I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just an inconvenience standing in her way. I wish I could say I stood up, walked away, and never looked back. But the truth is uglier. I begged. I told Sarah we could fix this, that we could find a way back. I reminded her of Emily, of the family we'd built, of everything we'd been through. I promised I'd change, that I'd be better, that I'd do whatever it took. My words tumbled out, frantic and broken, like a drowning man clawing for air. But she just stared at me, eyes cold, arms folded, like I was pathetic. "Mike," she said, "you don't get it. I don't want to fix this. I'm happy with Jake. I'm done pretending." The desperation in me turned to silence. In that moment, I realized I was the only one still fighting for something already buried. And nothing feels lonelier than realizing you're the only person trying to save a marriage that's already dead. When the words ran out, so did her patience. Sarah didn't yell, didn't slam doors. She just walked upstairs, packed a single suitcase, and came back down without a trace of hesitation. I watched her move around the house we'd built together, pulling clothes from drawers, grabbing her laptop off the desk, slipping her wedding ring onto the counter as if it were just another useless trinket. That tiny metal band clinked against the wood, and it was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I stood in the doorway, frozen, as she wheeled her suitcase to the car. Emily's bedroom light was still on upstairs. I prayed she was asleep, that she wouldn't see this. Sarah didn't say goodbye, not to me, not to Emily. She opened the car door, started the engine, and drove off into the night. No glance back, no hesitation, just gone. And in that silence, our entire life together ended. I stood there in the empty hallway, trying to process the silence Sarah left behind, when I heard it, soft, muffled sobs coming from upstairs. Emily hadn't been asleep. She'd heard everything. I walked up slowly, every step heavier than the last, and found her curled up on her bed, clutching a pillow to her chest. Her eyes were red, her cheeks wet. She tried to wipe them, to be strong, but she was only 14. "Dad," she whispered, "why doesn't Mom love us anymore?" And I had no answer. My throat tightened, and for the first time that night, the tears came. I sat beside her, pulled her close, and all I could say was, "This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." We stayed like that for a long time, holding on to each other while the world we knew crumbled around us. That night, Emily grew up too fast, and I felt myself break in ways I didn't know were possible. A week later, the envelope came. Thin, unassuming, just a stack of papers slid under the weight of an official seal. Divorce papers. After 16 years, 19 together, that was all our life amounted to, signatures and legal language. Sarah didn't fight. No drawn-out arguments over money or assets. She didn't ask for alimony. She didn't even seem to care about the house. All she wanted was out, clean, fast. In some ways, that should have been a relief. No court battles, no endless negotiations, but it felt worse, colder, like I wasn't even worth the trouble of a fight. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, our table, and signing my name where hers had already been scribbled. It was like stamping approval on my own erasure. And just like that, with the stroke of a pen, Sarah cut herself free. No ceremony, no goodbye, just silence where a marriage used to be. Not long after the divorce papers were finalized, I got an email from Jake. No phone call, no face-to-face, just a few typed lines on a glowing screen. He said he was sorry. Sorry he hadn't told me sooner. Sorry for how things turned out. As if my entire life falling apart was just some accident, some messy business deal gone wrong. He wrote that he loved Sarah but never wanted to hurt me. Then he announced he was selling his shares in the company and moving to Boston with her. That was it. No explanation that mattered. No attempt to make things right. Just an apology as shallow as the man himself and a clean exit from the business we built together. I stared at that email for a long time. This was the guy I trusted like a brother. The guy I built everything with. And with a few sentences, he was gone, taking my wife and our friendship with him. In the span of a few months, I lost the two people I thought would stand beside me for life. My wife, my best friend, gone, together. It wasn't just betrayal. It was like the ground beneath me gave way. Sarah had been my partner for nearly 2 decades. Jake had been the brother I never had. They knew my weaknesses, my fears, my dreams, and they used that access to carve me open. The house felt emptier than ever. Every corner echoed with absence, her perfume still lingering in the bathroom, his handwriting still on old project notes in the office. I couldn't escape them. Everywhere I turned was a ghost of what used to be. But the cruelest part? Life didn't stop. The world kept moving, clients kept calling, bills kept coming, and I had no choice but to keep going, carrying the weight of betrayal on my shoulders. I hadn't just lost them. I'd lost the life I thought I knew. After the dust settled, after the silence became unbearable, I realized I had 2 choices: stay broken or stand up. And the only reason I chose the second was Emily. She had already lost her mother in the ugliest way possible. I wasn't going to let her lose me too. Every morning when I saw her dragging herself to school with heavy eyes, I knew I had to be strong, even if I was falling apart inside. I threw myself into routine, making her breakfast, packing her lunch, asking about her day even when my own felt meaningless. At night, when she'd sit beside me on the couch doing homework, I reminded myself, this is why I can't quit. She needed a father who wouldn't abandon her. And maybe, just maybe, I needed her even more. So I made a promise to rebuild, not for Sarah, not for Jake, but for my daughter, for Emily. When your world collapses, You either drown in the rubble or you build with what's left. For me, that meant work. The business wasn't just a job anymore. It was my lifeline. Every morning I buried myself in projects, pouring concrete, fixing roofs, meeting clients. The noise of drills and hammers drowned out the noise in my head. Out there, on the job site, I wasn't the man whose wife left him. I was Mike, the builder, the problem solver, the guy people relied on to get things done. Some days the exhaustion was the only thing that kept me from breaking. By the time I got home, too tired to think, I could at least sit across from Emily without falling apart. Work gave me purpose when everything else had been ripped away. And slowly, through sawdust and sweat, I realized, maybe survival isn't about forgetting the pain. Maybe it's about building something stronger on top of it. It didn't take long for me to notice. Emily wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was becoming my rock. At 14, she should have been worried about school dances and social media drama, not divorce lawyers and custody papers. But life forced her to grow up faster. I'd come home late, shoulders heavy, and she'd already have dinner warming in the oven. She'd leave me little notes. "Don't forget to eat, Dad," like she was the parent and I was the child. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me with worried eyes, the kind no teenager should carry. She still laughed, still had her friends, but there was a quiet strength in her now, a maturity that came from heartbreak. And every time she told me, "We'll be okay, Dad," I believed her a little more. Emily wasn't supposed to have to carry that weight, but somehow she did. And in many ways, she was the reason I didn't collapse completely. Dinner used to be the one time of day we all came together. Sarah would cook, Emily would chatter about school, and I'd tell stories from the job site. The table was loud, messy, alive. Now, it was just the two of us, me and Emily, sitting across from each other with plates that felt too big for the silence between us. Sometimes she'd try to fill it, asking about work or cracking a joke, but more often we just ate quietly, pretending the empty chair didn't matter. I caught myself setting out 3 plates more than once, muscle memory playing cruel tricks. Each time I'd put the extra dish back in the cabinet, the clatter echoing louder than words. It wasn't just food we were missing. It was her presence, the illusion of family we used to have. And though part of me was relieved she was gone, those dinners reminded me how broken everything really was. The house felt different after Sarah left. Heavier, like the walls carried memories that pressed down on us. Every corner whispered her absence, the perfume in the closet, the photo frames that still held her smile, the faint echo of her voice. At first it was unbearable, but slowly I noticed something else. The tension that used to hang in the air was gone. No more late-night arguments, no more walking on eggshells wondering what mood she'd be in. The silence, while painful, was also peaceful. Emily and I started to breathe easier. We could laugh without worrying about a sharp comment cutting it short. We could sit in the living room, watch TV, and feel like we were safe in our own home. The house was heavy with memories, yes, but for the first time in years, it was also ours, free from the shadow of someone who'd already left us long before she walked out the door. With Sarah gone, Emily and I had to relearn how to live. At first it was awkward, 2 people trying to fill the gap of a missing third. But little by little, we built new routines. Mornings started with both of us in the kitchen. I'd make coffee while Emily scrambled eggs, the smell of breakfast filling the air. We'd sit together, planning our day, something we never used to do when Sarah was around. Evenings became our time. Sometimes we cooked together, sometimes we ordered takeout and ate in front of the TV. We found comfort in small traditions. Friday pizza night, Saturday morning pancakes. They weren't fancy, but they were ours. The house still felt too quiet, but now the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with the sound of laughter, clinking dishes, and the simple rhythm of 2 people learning how to be a family again. And in those little routines, I started to believe we might be okay. For months, I thought Sarah's absence was a wound we'd never heal from. But as Emily and I settled into our routines, something unexpected happened. I started to feel lighter. There were no more slammed doors, no more cold shoulders, no more pretending we were happy when we weren't. The tension that used to choke our home was gone, and in its place, there was peace. I watched Emily blossom. She laughed more, joked more, even seemed freer without the constant weight of her mother's disappointment pressing down on her. For the first time in years, I could breathe without fear of what mood Sarah would be in when I walked through the door. It hit me one night as Emily and I sat on the couch eating pizza, laughing at a dumb movie. Maybe we were better off without her. Maybe losing Sarah wasn't the end of us. It was the beginning of something new. 6 months passed. On the surface, life looked normal again. The business kept me busy, Emily was doing well in school, and our routines gave us structure. From the outside, you might think we'd moved on. But healing isn't that simple. There were nights I'd wake up reaching for a body that wasn't there. Days when I'd catch a whiff of perfume in a crowd and feel my chest tighten. And Emily, she carried her pain quietly, but I saw it in the way she avoided talking about her mother, in the way her smile sometimes faltered when she thought I wasn't looking. We laughed, we lived, but the cracks were still there, thin lines running through both of us, reminders of everything we'd lost. Time dulled the sting, yes, but the scar was still raw, and deep down, I knew the story wasn't over, because ghosts have a way of coming back when you least expect them. For months, Sarah and Jake vanished from our world. No calls, no visits, not even a stray message. It was as if they'd packed up their betrayal and carried it to another life, far from ours. At first, the silence felt like a gift. No drama, no tension, just space to breathe, to focus on Emily, to rebuild. Every day without hearing their names was a small victory. But silence can be deceptive. Part of me kept waiting for the knock on the door, the email, the inevitable reminder that unfinished business always finds its way back. Still, I tried to convince myself it was over, that Sarah was gone for good, that Jake was just a ghost of a friendship I once had. For half a year, I let myself believe the storm had passed, but I should have known better. Because storms don't disappear, they circle back when the sky seems clearest. It was late, close to 11, when the peace shattered. I was in my office finishing up paperwork, Emily already tucked in for the night, when the doorbell rang. Not once, not twice, over and over, frantic, desperate, like someone pounding for their life. At first, I froze. That kind of knocking doesn't come with good news. Emily came running down the hall, eyes wide, asking who it was. Through the glass by the door, I saw a figure pacing on the porch, shoulders shaking. When the porch light hit her face, my stomach dropped. Sarah. 6 months gone, and now she was back, looking wild, eyes red, hair disheveled. Emily grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't open it, Dad." But something in me knew, whatever brought her here in the middle of the night wasn't small. I took a deep breath, my hand hovering over the doorknob, torn between my daughter's warning and my own gnawing curiosity. I opened the door, and there she was, Sarah, standing under the porch light like some ghost dragged back from the past. Her hair was a mess, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and her hands trembled as she pounded on the frame. "Mike, open up! We need to talk!" Her voice cracked, but it wasn't soft or apologetic. It was sharp, almost accusing. For a second, I just stared. The woman who had walked out of my life without a backward glance now stood there in the middle of the night, demanding entry like she still belonged here. Behind me, Emily whispered, "Don't let her in." Her voice was steady, but I could feel the fear in her grip on my arm. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to protect the fragile peace we'd built. But another part knew Sarah wouldn't be here unless something was very, very wrong. And my silence only made her pound louder. As Sarah's fists rattled the door, I felt Emily's hand clutch tighter at my sleeve. Her voice came low, almost a whisper, but firm. "Don't open the door, Dad." There was no hesitation, no childlike wavering. She meant it. 14 years old, but in that moment she spoke with the certainty of someone who had been forced to grow up too fast. Her eyes were wide, shining with both fear and anger. Fear of letting the chaos back into our lives. Anger at the woman who had caused it all. "Please," she added, her voice breaking. "We don't need her anymore. She left us." I looked at her and felt the weight of her words. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was trying to protect me. But as Sarah's voice grew louder on the other side, demanding, pleading, I knew I had to make a choice. And against Emily's whispered plea, I turned the handle. The second I opened the door, Sarah didn't step forward with tears or apologies. She exploded. "You think you can just leave me to suffer? You think this is fair?" Her voice was sharp, echoing through the quiet street. She didn't care if the neighbors heard. I held the door halfway shut, blocking her from storming in, but she leaned forward, jabbing a finger at my chest. "You ruined my life, Mike. You knew what he was like, and you didn't tell me. You let this happen." I blinked, stunned. After everything she'd done, after leaving us in ruins, she was standing on my porch at midnight, blaming me. Emily stood behind me, silent, but I could feel her trembling with rage. Sarah's words poured out in a frenzy, louder and faster, until finally she yanked up her sleeve, revealing a bandage on her arm. "Look what Jake did to me," she shouted. And just like that, the storm had broken wide open. Her words spiraled from anger into madness. She jabbed her finger at me again, voice breaking into a scream. "I'm going to sue you, Mike. I'll drag you into court and make sure I get everything I'm owed." I stared at her, stunned. "Owed? You walked out. You left us." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes were wild, darting between me and Emily standing in the shadows. "You knew what Jake was like. You knew he was dangerous, and you hid it from me to punish me for leaving. Don't you dare act innocent." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After destroying our marriage, abandoning her daughter, and running off with my business partner, she was standing on my porch at midnight blaming me for her misery. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but behind me, I heard Emily's shaky breath. She'd had enough. And before I could stop her, my daughter stepped forward. Sarah yanked her sleeve higher, thrusting her arm toward me like evidence in a trial. Under the porch light, I saw it, an angry bruise stretching across her forearm, dark against her pale skin, a bandage barely covering a cut. "See this?" she hissed. "This is what Jake did to me. The man you let into our lives. The man you knew would hurt me." Her voice cracked, but there were no tears, only fury. For a split second, I felt a jolt of shock. Jake had never shown me this side. He'd always been calm, collected, professional. The thought of him turning violent was hard to process. But before I could even ask, Sarah pushed closer. "You knew. You let me walk into this. You wanted me to suffer." Her words twisted the knife deeper. She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding I take the blame. And as I stood there, torn between disbelief and anger, Emily's voice cut through the night. Sarah's words tumbled out in a torrent. She clutched her bandaged arm and started pacing the porch like a trapped animal. "In Boston, everything fell apart," she spat. "Jake changed. At first it was shouting, little things, blaming me for him leaving the business, snapping over money, telling me I ruined his life. But it got worse. Every night we fought. Every night he screamed." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "Then last week, he snapped. He threw a vase. I tried to dodge, but it smashed into my arm. He didn't even apologize. He just glared at me like I was the reason his whole world collapsed." She looked at me, eyes wild, searching for sympathy. "You knew, Mike. You must have known this side of him. And you let me walk into it. You let me burn." I shook my head slowly, stunned. The man I once trusted had turned into a monster, yet somehow she still found a way to make it my fault. Sarah's voice rose, jagged with rage. "Don't you dare stand there and act like you didn't know, Mike. You worked with him for years. You saw him every day. You had to know what he was capable of." I shook my head, stunned. I knew Jake as a partner, not a husband. I never saw this side of him, not once. But she wouldn't stop. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. "No, you hid it from me. You wanted me to suffer. This is your revenge, isn't it? You sat back and let me walk straight into hell because I betrayed you." Her words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they revealed just how far she'd fallen. Even bruised, abandoned, broken by the man she chose over her family, she still found a way to twist the knife back into me. Emily shifted behind me, her breath quick and sharp. She'd heard enough. For a moment, I stood frozen, her words rattling in my skull. The Sarah I once knew was gone, replaced by this furious stranger who couldn't see past her own mistakes. I wanted to believe there was still a trace of the woman I'd loved, the mother of my child. But as she hurled accusations at me, I realized the truth. This wasn't about Jake's abuse. This wasn't about fear or pain. This was about control, about her refusing to accept the consequences of her choices. She wasn't here to ask for help. She was here to dump her guilt on me, to rewrite the story so she could still be the victim. And as that realization hit, the shock in me turned to anger. She could scream, she could threaten, she could cry all she wanted, but I wasn't the one who destroyed this family, she was. And before I could respond, another voice, small but steady, rose from behind me. Before I could even open my mouth, Emily stepped out from behind me. Her small frame looked fragile in the doorway, but her voice was steady, sharp, cutting through the night. "Stop it, Mom." Sarah froze, blinking as if she'd forgotten her daughter was standing there. Emily's eyes burned, her fists clenched at her sides. "Don't you dare blame Dad for what you did. You left us, you cheated, you lied, and now you want to come back and act like you're the victim?" Her words came like arrows, each one landing harder than the last. "Dad has been here for me every single day. Where were you? With him, while we cried alone." For a moment, Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. Emily didn't waver. "You failed as a wife, and you failed as a mother. So don't stand here and pretend you're the one who's been hurt." The silence after those words was deafening. Emily's voice didn't shake. Her eyes locked on her mother's, unflinching. "You failed, Mom. You failed at being a wife. You failed at being a mother. And now you want us to feel sorry for you? No. You don't get to walk out on us and then come crawling back, acting like you deserve our sympathy." Sarah's face twisted, but no words came. For the first time, she looked small, shrinking under the weight of her own daughter's judgment. Emily's voice cracked then, not from weakness but from pain. "You chose him over us. And now you live with that choice. Don't blame Dad. Don't blame me. Look in the mirror. The only person who destroyed this family is you." Each word cut deeper than any insult I could have spoken. They weren't my words. They were hers. The truth Sarah couldn't run from. And in that moment, my daughter was stronger than both of us combined. The porch was dead silent after Emily's words. Sarah's mouth opened, as if she might argue, but nothing came. She just stood there, stunned, her arms still half raised as if reaching for something already gone. Then Emily stepped forward, her small hands gripping the door. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "We're not your family anymore." And with that, she slammed it shut. The sound cracked through the house like thunder, final and unforgiving. On the other side, we could hear Sarah's muffled sobs, her fists weakly hitting the wood. But Emily didn't flinch. She turned, her face pale but steady, and walked back toward her room without another word. I stood frozen in the hallway, torn between the instinct to comfort Sarah outside and the pride swelling in my chest for the daughter who had just defended us both. The door was closed now, not just to the house, but to everything Sarah once was to us. After Emily disappeared down the hall, the house went still. But from outside, through the door, I could hear it, Sarah's muffled sobs. At first they were sharp, angry cries, fists pounding against the wood. Then they softened, breaking into ragged gasps that carried years of regret, or maybe just self-pity. I stood there in the dark hallway, my hand hovering over the knob. For a brief moment, the part of me that had once loved her wanted to open it, to step outside, to comfort her the way I had 100 times before. But then I remembered the texts, the nights she'd chosen Jake over us, the look on Emily's face when she whispered, "Don't open the door." So I stayed still, listening, but not moving. Sarah could cry all she wanted, but those tears weren't for us. They were for herself. And for the first time, I realized I didn't owe her anything anymore. I thought slamming the door would be the end. I thought maybe Sarah would finally disappear back into the life she chose. But a few days later, there was another knock, calm, steady, nothing like the frantic pounding that night. When I opened the door, she wasn't alone. A man in a tailored suit stood beside her, briefcase in hand. Her lawyer. Sarah didn't waste time. No tears, no drama, just a cold smile. "I'm filing for full custody of Emily," she said, like she was announcing the weather. The lawyer nodded, handing me a stack of documents thick enough to choke on. My blood boiled. After months of silence, after abandoning her daughter, after showing up crying on my porch, she had the nerve to come back and try to take Emily away from me. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stared her down and said, "Be my guest." But inside, I was burning. Sarah crossed her arms, her lawyer standing silent like a shadow beside her. "I should have done this months ago," she said coldly. "But I was trying to be merciful. I thought letting you have Emily would make things easier. Clearly I was wrong." Her words hit me like acid. Merciful? This was the same woman who hadn't called her daughter in half a year, who'd missed birthdays, school concerts, every moment that mattered. And now she wanted to stand here and pretend she was some kind of martyr? I glanced at the lawyer's stack of papers, custody petitions, affidavits, legal jargon meant to slice my life apart. For a second, fear gripped me. What if the system believed her lies? But then I looked at Emily's picture on the wall behind me, her smile, her strength, and the fear hardened into steel. "You walked away from her," I said evenly. "You don't get to come back and play mother when it suits you." Sarah lifted her chin, her voice shifting from sharp to almost righteous. "You think I abandoned Emily? You think I didn't care?" She gestured toward the lawyer's papers. "I left her with you because I was thinking of you, Mike. I didn't want to drag you through a nasty custody battle back then. I spared you." I nearly laughed, but the anger in my chest drowned it out. She stood there, trying to twist her absence into some kind of gift, like her silence was an act of mercy instead of neglect. "You call 6 months of ignoring your daughter mercy?" I shot back. "You didn't even try. You didn't call. You didn't write. You didn't care." Her jaw tightened. "I cared enough to let you have her when you were broken. But now I see. You've poisoned her against me. That ends here." In that moment, I realized this wasn't about Emily. This was about Sarah refusing to face the truth. I felt the heat rising in my chest, the kind that makes your hands shake. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "You think disappearing was for me? Don't kid yourself, Sarah. You left because you wanted a new life with Jake. You didn't spare me. You spared yourself the inconvenience of being a mother." Her eyes narrowed, but I pressed on. "You can spin it however you want, but Emily remembers. She remembers who was here every night, who made her dinner, who listened when she cried, and it wasn't you." For the first time, Sarah's face flickered, like my words had cut through her armor. But she recovered fast, her lawyer shifting uncomfortably at her side. Inside, my anger roared, but on the outside, I stayed calm. I had to. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from a woman who had already failed her once. When I finally told Emily about Sarah's plan to take her away, she didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just sat there on the couch, silent, her hands gripping the sleeves of her hoodie. After a long pause, she looked up at me, eyes blazing. "She's not taking me anywhere, Dad. She doesn't get to come back after 6 months and pretend she cares." I tried to soften it, to remind her that no matter what, Sarah was still her mother. But Emily shook her head. "No. Moms don't abandon their kids. Moms don't disappear and then show up with lawyers. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine." Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. At 14, my daughter spoke with the kind of clarity adults spend a lifetime searching for. And in that moment, I realized Sarah had already lost her, long before the courts ever got involved. The next morning, I sat across from my lawyer's desk, the weight of everything pressing on my shoulders. The custody papers lay between us, thick with legal language I barely understood. He flipped through them calmly, nodding. "Mike, you're in a stronger position than you think," he said. "She hasn't been present for Emily for months. Courts don't ignore that. And Emily's 14. That means her voice carries weight. If she tells the judge she wants to stay with you, it matters." I exhaled, some of the pressure lifting. Still, doubt gnawed at me. "But Sarah, she twists things. What if she convinces them I turned Emily against her?" My lawyer leaned forward. "The facts speak louder. Keep doing what you've been doing, being there for your daughter. Let her truth be heard. That's your strongest defense." For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a fight I could win. A week later, the envelope came. Thick, sealed, stamped with the court's insignia. My lawyer had warned me to expect it, but holding it in my hands still sent a chill down my spine. Inside were the official custody filings. Sarah was demanding full custody of Emily, her school records, her schedule, even her place of residence. The woman who hadn't called her daughter in half a year now wanted to decide every detail of her life. Reading through the claims made my stomach turn. Sarah painted herself as a caring mother who had stepped aside only to protect me, claiming I had poisoned Emily against her. Lies, stacked on lies, written in cold legal ink. I looked across the table at Emily as she did her homework, her headphones in, blissfully unaware of the words that threatened to tear our world apart. The papers were official now. The fight wasn't coming. It had already begun. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more twisted, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Jake. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. The man had taken my wife, my trust, half my life. But curiosity, and maybe anger, won out. I picked up. His voice was shaky, almost desperate. "Mike, I need your help." I nearly laughed. "My help? After everything?" He rushed on before I could hang up. "It's Sarah. She left. She won't answer my calls, won't tell me where she is. I know she must have come to you. Please, I need to talk to her." The irony was suffocating. The man who'd stabbed me in the back was now begging me to lead him back to the woman who betrayed us both. And as I listened to him plead, an idea began to form, a way to turn their chaos against them. Jake's voice cracked through the line, heavy with desperation. "Mike, please, just tell her to come back. Tell her I'll fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't lose her." I sat there gripping the phone, stunned by the irony. This was the same man who once swore he loved her more than I ever could, the man she threw everything away for. And now he was begging me, the husband he betrayed, to save their crumbling relationship. Part of me wanted to hang up, to let him drown in the mess he'd made. But another part saw an opportunity. If Jake wanted Sarah back badly enough, maybe I could use that. Maybe if they reunited, they'd finally leave me and Emily alone. His voice dropped, almost pleading. "You know her, Mike. She listens to you. Please, just help me get her back." For the first time in months, I felt the power shift, and I wasn't about to waste it. As Jake begged on the other end of the line, something shifted inside me. For months, I'd felt powerless. Sarah leaving, the divorce, the custody battle. But now, here was Jake, the man who'd stolen everything from me, reduced to pleading like a child. And that's when it hit me. Maybe I could use this. Maybe for once their chaos could work in my favor. If Jake was desperate enough to chase after Sarah, maybe he'd convince her to back down from the custody fight. Maybe if they patched things up, they'd finally leave me and Emily out of their toxic spiral. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not for a second. But I recognized an opportunity when I saw one. So instead of slamming the phone down, I leaned back in my chair, listening carefully, planning my next move. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was playing the game. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "Yeah, Jake. She was here. She showed up a few nights ago, angry, bruised, yelling at me like it was all my fault. But she's not staying with me. I don't know where she's living now." There was silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. "So she was with you," he muttered, more to himself than to me. His tone cracked with panic. "Mike, please, if you hear from her again, tell her I'm looking for her. Tell her I still want her back." I almost laughed at the irony. He wanted me, the man he betrayed, to be the messenger of his devotion. But instead I simply said, "If she comes back, I'll let her know." What I didn't tell him was the truth in my head. I was counting on him to find her, to drag her back into the mess they created together, because the further they stayed from Emily and me, the better. A few days later, we sat across from each other in the mediator's office, me on one side, Sarah and her lawyer on the other. The room was quiet, sterile, filled with the faint hum of fluorescent lights. The mediator tried to keep things civil, asking simple questions, suggesting compromises. But Sarah wasn't interested in compromise. Every proposal was met with a sharp no. She wanted full custody, nothing less. I kept my cool, repeating the facts. She'd been gone for 6 months. Emily didn't want to live with her. I had been the one raising her. But Sarah's face was stone. "He's poisoning my daughter against me," she snapped. "I won't sit here and play nice." After less than 30 minutes, she stood up, grabbed her bag and stormed out, her heels clicking down the hallway like gunshots. Her lawyer followed, embarrassed. The mediator sighed, shaking his head. Looks like this one's going to court. The very next day, I pulled into the driveway to find Jake sitting on my front steps. His head was buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. When he looked up, his face was streaked with tears, his eyes red and swollen. "Mike," he choked, "I can't do this anymore. She won't answer me. She's shutting me out. Please, man, I just need to talk to her." For a moment, I just stared. This was the man who'd helped rip my life apart, reduced now to a shell, crying on my porch like a child who'd lost his toy. Emily peeked from the window, her face twisted in disgust. I told her to stay inside. Then I stepped forward, my voice cold. "Jake, you need to leave. You made your choices. You live with them." He broke down harder, begging, sobbing into his hands. And though part of me wanted to throw him off my property, another part almost relished the sight. For once, he was the one left broken. I let him sob for a moment longer, his shoulders shaking on my porch. Then I drew a hard line. "Enough, Jake." My voice was low but firm. He looked up at me, eyes swollen, searching for a shred of compassion. He wasn't going to find it. "You destroyed my marriage. You betrayed our friendship. And now you sit here crying, asking me to help you fix the very mess you made? No, you don't get to dump this at my feet." He started to protest, but I cut him off, my words like ice. "You and Sarah chose each other. That means you also chose the fallout. Don't come to me for rescue. Don't come here at all. You're done. We're done." Jake blinked, stunned, his mouth opening and closing with no sound. Then slowly he stood, wiping his face with the back of his hand. And without another word, I pointed to the street. "Leave, and don't ever come back." A few days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Meet us. Cafe on Main. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I went. I didn't want them near the house, near Emily. When I walked into the cafe, there they were, sitting side by side in a booth like nothing had ever happened. Jake looked worn down, his eyes hollow. Sarah, though, wore that familiar sharp expression, half defiant, half desperate. They both stood as I approached. "Mike," Sarah began, her voice almost soft, "thank you for coming." I slid into the seat across from them, arms crossed. "Say what you need to say. I don't have time for games." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sarah reached across the table, her voice cracking. We made mistakes, but we want to make things right. For Emily, for all of us." I stared at them, disbelief rising. After everything, they thought they could just sit here and negotiate their way back in? Sarah leaned forward first, her hands clasped like she was praying. "Mike, I know we hurt you. I know what we did was unforgivable. But we're asking for another chance. Not as husband and wife, but as family. For Emily's sake." Jake nodded quickly, his voice rough. "She misses her mom. And I miss the business. We both made mistakes, but maybe we can rebuild. Together." Their words spilled out like rehearsed lines, each one more desperate than the last. They apologized, they begged, they promised things would be different this time. And I sat there staring across the table at the two people who had ripped my life apart, listening to them plead for a seat back at the very table they'd flipped over. They wanted forgiveness. They wanted access. They wanted back in. But all I could think was, after everything they destroyed, how dare they ask me to open the door again? After her rehearsed apology, Sarah straightened her shoulders and shifted tone. "Look, Mike, I don't expect us to be husband and wife again, but I am still Emily's mother. I want her to spend weekends with me. Every weekend, or at least every other. She needs her mom." I almost laughed out loud. Her mom? For half a year, Emily hadn't heard a single word from her. No phone calls, no visits, no letters, nothing. And now, suddenly, Sarah wanted to swoop in and play the role again, like you can abandon a child and then pick them up on your own schedule. "She doesn't want to see you," I said flatly. "And I'm not forcing her into something she doesn't want." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she pressed on. "You're the father. It's your job to make her see me. She's just a kid. She doesn't know what she needs. I leaned across the table, my voice like steel. She knows more than you ever gave her credit for. Before I could even finish glaring at Sarah, Jake jumped in, his voice eager, almost rehearsed. And as for me, Mike, I want back in, the company. I've been thinking, why not open a branch in Boston? We could rebuild what we started, be partners again. I blinked, stunned. You sold your shares, Jake. You walked away. That chapter is closed. He leaned forward, his eyes wide with false optimism. We were a great team, you know it. We built that business from nothing. I made a mistake leaving, but I can make it right. Just give me another shot. I stared at him in disbelief. The man who stole my wife, betrayed my trust, burned every bridge between us, now wanted me to hand him back half my life's work like none of it happened. The arrogance was staggering. For a second, I wondered if this was some kind of sick joke. But no, he was dead serious. I sat back, let them finish their pathetic pitch, and then I spoke. My voice was calm, deadly calm. Let me make this perfectly clear. You don't get weekends with Emily. You don't get a second chance to play mother when you walked out on her. And you, I pointed at Jake, you don't get to walk back into my company after selling me out and selling your shares. That door is shut forever. They both froze, waiting for me to soften, to leave even the smallest crack open. But I didn't. You two dug your own grave when you chose each other over everything else. Don't come crawling back, asking me to pull you out. You wanted this life. Now lie in it. Sarah's face went pale. Jake's mouth hung open. For once, neither had anything to say. I stood, tossed a few bills on the table for my coffee, and walked out. That was the moment I knew. I was done with both of them. As I pushed back from the booth, Sarah's composure cracked. Her eyes widened and she reached out across the table, her voice trembling. Mike, please, don't do this. Don't shut me out of Emily's life. I just need another chance. She's still my daughter. Her words hung in the air, fragile, desperate, almost pathetic. For a second I saw the fear in her eyes, the realization that she had finally lost control. Jake, on the other hand, said nothing. He sat slumped in the booth, staring at the table like a man who'd already accepted defeat. The fire, the arrogance that once burned in him, was gone. He looked hollow, like a shadow of the man who'd once stolen everything from me. I didn't answer Sarah. I didn't look back at either of them. I just walked out of that cafe knowing, for the first time in a long time, that the power was finally mine. When I walked back into the house, the weight of that cafe meeting slid off my shoulders like a heavy coat. Emily was curled up on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders, homework spread out across the coffee table. She looked up the moment I walked in. Did she come again? She asked quietly, already knowing the answer. I sat beside her and nodded. Yeah, both of them. They wanted things they'll never get. Her brows knit together, but before the anger could rise, I reached over and pulled her close. Em, listen to me. None of that matters. Not the lawsuits, not their demands. What matters is this. I pressed a hand over her heart. You and me. Us. We're the family. That's all I care about. She leaned against me, her small frame stronger than it looked. I know, Dad, and I'm not going anywhere. In that moment, I realized I already had everything I needed. The days after that meeting slipped into weeks, then into months, and slowly the noise died down. No more surprise knocks at the door. No more lawyers with thick envelopes. No more desperate phone calls. It was just me and Emily again. Our dinners were simple, sometimes quiet, but filled with laughter that felt more genuine than anything we'd had in years. We built our own routines, school runs, movie nights, weekend breakfasts where she insisted on making pancakes, even if half of them burned. The house, once heavy with silence, now carried the rhythm of our new life. A calmer life. A better one. Sometimes I'd catch myself waiting for the chaos to return, for Sarah or Jake to rear their heads again. But as time passed, they faded into the distance, like a bad dream dissolving in the morning light. For the first time in a long time, peace didn't feel temporary. It felt permanent. Looking back, I realize now I never needed Sarah to come back. I never needed Jake's apology. What I needed was exactly what I already had: Emily, and a life free from their poison. They dug their own graves the moment they chose betrayal over love, lies over truth. And as much as they tried to drag me down with them, I refused to climb into the hole they'd made. Today, Emily is thriving. She's stronger than I ever imagined, wiser beyond her years. And me? I've built a life I'm proud of, a home where peace isn't just possible, it's real. People always ask me if I regret not taking revenge, not fighting harder to destroy them. But here's the truth. The best revenge isn't anger, or bitterness, or lawsuits. The best revenge is living well. So tell me, if it were you, if the person you trusted most betrayed you like this, what would you do?